Hello, welcome. Welcome to the video. Sorry. First of all, sorry about the lighting situation. It's not great. My ceiling light is broken, so I have a lamp right here. Got Godzilla because this is the closest thing I have to a dragon toy within reach, easily accessible. He's going out of the way now, though. Wait. Awesome thumbnail shot. He's going out of the way now. Okay, we're talking about Dragonrider books. I am reading every Dragonrider book there is, or at least every Dragonrider book that I can get my grubby little mitts on. Not gonna do all of them and put them all in one video, because that would be like a 9-hour video. I do love me like a 9-hour video, but I would forget the first one by the time I finished the last one. So, couldn't be done. Not, for me, impossible. So today, we're talking about some of the big names, and one that's not nearly as big of a name. Talk about Eragon, of course. Fourth Wing, Pern, asterisk with the Pern, and Joust. The Joust series. So I'm going to talk about Eragon first. It's important to me that I talk to Eragon in the first video and as the first entry, because Eragon is so popular. It's like a touchstone, right? Almost everybody has read Eragon. So as I go down the list, it'll be easy to come back and compare things to Eragon. So that it'll build a very solid reference, right? So that's kind of why we picked that one to talk about first. Yeah. So, another note. Nope, just kidding. That's it. Oh, yes. No, just kidding. Another note. My script is up here on my screen. My phone is here. So, I might be a little bit, not quite eye contacting right now. Sorry about that, but I got a lot of thoughts, and I was not going to remember them all. So, yeah. Let's get started. 1 second, then we'll get started. Okay, here we go. So, Eragon by Christopher Paolini. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your last name, and I couldn't be bothered to look it up before this video, apparently. I didn't even think of that till right now. We're going to call him Chris. Yeah, so first of all, this is the newish, I don't know how new, I don't know, when was this released? Illustrated edition. I didn't even know this existed until until Murtagh came out, which I will not be talking about specifically in this video. Actually, not really at all. I might talk about it in another video. I don't know. I'm not talking about it in this video because, well, I suppose it is a Dragonrider book. Maybe I should. Okay, it gets a footnote in this video. Copyright 2023. Yeah, that must copyright it. Let's see, jacket art and interior illustrations, copyright 2023. Siddharth Chaturvedi. This person, again, sorry, I'm a terrible person, can't pronounce your name. By the way, illustrated edition has some beautiful art inside. So definitely pick it up if you get a chance. Right. So, getting into the substance of this video, Eragon. We're going to do this in two ways. We're going to first talk about just my thoughts about the book in general, and then we're going to talk about the subgenre stuff. So, the specifics of, like, Dragonrider books. To me, it's important to talk about both of these things. Because it's like, oh man, this book has some really awesome Dragonrider ideas, but it's not that great of a book. Maybe we want to know that, right? So, Eragon, or the Inheritance Cycle. There's a lot to say on this one, I feel, but not very much that actually hasn't already been said. Let's just recap some of the popular opinions, though, shall we? Just, just acknowledge them. Eragon, the big idea, right? Eragon is decent. It's okay, even, but it's derivative as hell. It's high fantasy Star Wars, heavy shades of Tolkien, leans heavily in genre tropes. Still, I think all of this is largely true. However, I think it is absolutely totally worth a read and a staple of the Dragonrider genre. I dare say even the whole fantasy scene today. or it was like 10 years ago. I'm gonna be real. I don't know what the kids these days are reading. Yeah. So my thoughts. I'll start with this. I think the books are better than they get credit for being. Of course, I think all the above is true as well, but I think that some of the things, the derivatives, the comments about derivation aren't bad. For example, tropes. Leaning into them is fine, right? Chris leans into a lot of fantasy tropes. What's wrong with that, right? It's a bit of a shortcut, but again, that's fine. For example, I could be recalling wrong, so, note, I should have said this before. I read Eragon as a very young kid. I started the first book in the 4th grade. Okay, so when I came back to read it for this, I was like, this book's gonna be bad. Like, I remember this book fondly because I hadn't experienced literature or, like, good storytelling yet. It is still good. It's still good and totally worth a read, and I'm gonna come back to that in a second. Okay, but I was just saying, tropes. I could be recalling this wrong, so leave me a comment, correct me if I'm wrong. Chris never goes into why the elves and the dwarves don't get along, right? That's something, it just exists. It's just that way in the world. But this is just like, it's in the general fantasy, like, zeitgeist, right? That's just how fantasy tends to be. If you're not going to, like, build your own world from the ground up, that's how you see it usually. Now, we don't really need to know what their beef is, but by just, like, offhand mentioning, that's a little better, by offhand mentioning this, he builds a reasonably large bit of his world without having to do a lot of legwork, right? He doesn't actually have to go into all these details, because we just know, right? We're like, oh yeah, they're elves and dwarves, they don't get along. That's how it is. Again, some call this lazy. I don't have an issue with this. I think it's saving time, so you can focus on the story you want to tell, which in this case, dragons and riders. That is kick-ass. Waste as little time as you can getting to that. Are you kidding me? It's dragons. Like, big, fiery scale, having, fire-breathing, flying, awesome. What? Get to that ASAP. I don't need to know about the 10,000 years ago war that's not relevant, right? I don't need a Silmarillion to enjoy my book. Not the Silmarillion isn't awesome. It is. But we don't need one for every book. So, right, he wastes very little time getting into the very cool stuff. That said, it feels earned. Like, none of the cool stuff is like, oh, wow, Eragon is so cool, but, like, he just is. It's like, Eragon earned his cool stars, for sure. A lot of the time, he just tries some cool, she's like, this would be good, I'm gonna do this, and then he gets his ass kicked for it. He definitely has an appropriate amount of struggle for his wins, as I have written in my script here. So sort of kind of close this off before I get into the next section. And again, I'm weirdly talking about Eragon a small amount. I'm going to talk about most of the other books a bit more than this, because I'm assuming that most of you watching this have already read Eragon. Most people who like fantasy have read Eragon. Yeah. If you haven't, go check it out. It's awesome. It's great. Totally, it's worth a read. It's absolutely worth a read. Even if it is a bit simple. Which I was getting to. So to close this off, it's a lot like Star Wars. Not only in like, oh, it's a copy Star Wars story because it's about the chosen one whose father was the magic guy with a colorful sword, and now the twist, that's not his real father, and now he has to inherit all the magic, whatever. It's much like the original trilogy, in my opinion. The original trilogy is very simple in its like structure of its story and its characters. And the original trilogy leans on a lot of fantasy tropes, granted different ones, but like it does things and you just kind of intuit or assume things about magic. Like you see Obi-Wan Kenobi and you're like, beard, wizard, cave, knows weird shit. This guy's a wizard. I think I already said that. Anyway, Eragon's a lot like the original trilogy in that it's a simple meal well made. It's simple and clean, it's tight, it does what it wants to do, and it's just enjoyable. It's like, it's fine. There's no problems with that. Star Wars, same thing. Fantasy tropes, swords, sorcery, wizards, mysticism, sword fights. That's cool, because it's awesome. It's dope. It's a simple meal, well made. Eragon and the inheritance cycle, same vibe. Murtagh, which is outside of the inheritance cycle, takes place in the same world, but it's not part of that series, I should say. if you're a fan of the original series, it's worth a read. If you're not, you can skip it. It's not as good as I wanted it to be, but it's not bad. But it's definitely not, definitely read Eragon. Bertog, only read it if you're, like, a fan. I'm not going to talk about the other spin-off book. It's like The Spoon, The Witch, and the Worm or something. Because that is, like, a compilation of various books that take place here or there. Section 2, we're into now. This is where I talk about subgenre specifics, subgenre being Dragon Rider, of books, right? So what I liked, what I didn't, and just go over the details of the Dragon Rider stuff. Because maybe some of you really like certain elements of some books and don't like elements of other books. So, starting out, I want to talk about the Dragon/Rider bonds in the world of Eragon. They are, hands down, my favorite Dragon Rider bonds that I've read thus far. Here's how it works. It's pretty simple. Dragon's egg is exposed to its rider at some point, asterisk, and then the dragon chooses to hatch for him, right? Sort of like subconsciously. The rider raises the dragon. They have this mental link at all times. It's not uncommon for the dragon. This is not, like, uncommon for Dragon Rider books in general. Like, that's kind of, thus far, this is pretty normal. Of the 4 series I've read so far, 3 of them do it in a very similar way to this. And again, we'll touch more on that later when we get to Pern, particularly. Right. So, yeah, Rider raises the dragon. In my opinion, though, most of the other ones, none of the other ones I've read so far, the bonds were as well written as they were here. Chris is really good at building the chemistry between dragons and the riders. He does a good job remembering that they're always in touch, not only with each other's thoughts, but, like, with each other's emotions. They feel a lot more like 2 pieces of a whole entity, or like, okay, we're going off script for a second here. A pencil. I need something to draw on. Okay, I've got this piece of I've got this piece of wood. So, normally, right? 2 characters, right? Here's their brains, okay? These 2 little circles. Totally separate things. And a lot of the time, I think what I've kind of come to expect is, like, this is kind of like the link between a dragon and a rider, right? Okay? They're connected, but, like, just a tiny bit. But the way it is in Eragon, it's like, guys, I swear this isn't a butt, alright? It's like, there's, like, a lot of overlap. Like, they're constantly in each other's brains fully. You know about it. And it's cool, though. Like, their bond it's well written. A lot of the time, the thoughts, like, between dragons and riders don't need to be voiced. Like, they don't have to say something. Sometimes, when they are, it's more of, like, a way to figure things out. Like, they'll rubber duck off each other. Eragon will just, like, verbalize his thoughts just so Saphira can bounce off of them. That's the dragon's name, Saphira, in case you didn't know. Just so she can bounce off of them, and they can kind of, like, rubber duck and figure out the problem that way. It kind of helps them focus. Furthermore, Chris is really good at showing how dragons think and how it's different from how humans think. There's a few Saphira POV chapters that are really interesting, and I don't quite have my finger down on exactly what it is, but, like, it's in the word choices and the patterns of speech. I think I'm gonna have to touch on it again as I get, like, further into the other books, because it's kind of hard to articulate, especially without having a lot of other stuff to compare to. But remember what I've said so far, because I'm gonna build on this Eragon section throughout the whole series. In fact, I'm gonna try and keep it shorter because I'm gonna compare it so much. Eragon, at the end of this whole series, is probably gonna have the most time talked about, like, if you're just, like, compared to everything else, just because I keep coming back to it for comparison's sake. Anyway, like I said, most of you who clicked this video, you already read the books. Okay, next up, this is what a lot of other people clicked for, I'm sure. Fourth Wing. Oh boy, there's a lot to say about Fourth Wing. And its sequel, Iron Flame. At time of writing, there's a 3rd book announced, and the cover's out, I think, announced, but there's no 3rd book just yet. Okay, so once again, raw thoughts, impressions first, then we're gonna get into the subgenre tropes and stuff. Okay, brace yourselves, book talk girlies. This one's gonna hurt. Fourth Wing is terrible. This is an awful book. It's so bad. If you haven't read it, I'm just gonna tell you the premise, okay? Mildly spoilerish, and it's gonna you're gonna cringe if you partake in literature and particularly fan fiction. You're gonna cringe. Also for the record, there are things about this book I do like, but we're gonna talk about the things that I hate first. Here's the premise. A super smart but physically weak and sickly girl with silver hair who loves reading is the main character, okay? Her mom is like the A1 general, the big head honcho at this war college in this world. There's like this centuries-old war going on, right? Anyway, she loves reading, wants to become a scribe. Her mom forces her to join the Dragonrider division of the war college, okay? She's going to the entry challenge. Her big sister shows up and is like, dude, I can't believe mom's doing this to you. This is so rude. What the heck? Anyway, there's this one dude. Watch out for him. He will try and kill you if on sight. It's on sight with this dude. Mom did something nasty to him a long time ago. I don't know. He hates us because of our last name, basically. As soon as I hear this line, no matter, I'm like, okay. As soon as this interaction happens, I'm like, all right. YA novel. Big hype about this dude. As soon as you hear his name, you're like, yep, they're gonna do enemies to lovers. You mean like first two chapters, whatever. His name, Xaden Ryerson. Okay, spelled with an X. Couldn't even spell it with a Z. Still with an X. And then she's like, okay, got it. Oh, no circumstances. Gotta stay away from this guy. Walks around the corner, goes towards the challenge. Holy crap! Who is this guy? This is the most beautiful man I've ever seen. Like, spends a super long time describing this guy. He's tall, like super fanfic. He's super thirsty. He's tall and buff, and he's wearing all black, and he has dark onyx-colored eyes with flecks of gold in them, and he's got a scar on his face, and later we find out he's got scars all over his back too. Anyways, guess who he is? Yep, it's old Xaden himself, who I will be calling Z-Man from now on, despite the fact that his name starts with an X. Okay, sorry, bit of time on the intro there. I was reading this, and I was like, God. Anyway, at the intro, the entry exam, there's this long bridge, right, to get into the college. It's really easy to fall off. Bunch of people die on it. It's like, oh man, this is the test to get into the school. I think it's stupid, like, from a world-building perspective, and it just doesn't make sense from a story perspective. But anyway, a bunch of people die, and you're just allowed to kill other people on the bridge because they want to trim the weak or whatever. It's dumb. To me, actually, it kind of feels like a way to drum up the stakes artificially. Like, oh, anybody can die at any time, remember? So, just that's how stakes work. So anyway, and at this point, it really sort of feels like it's trying to be like, it's Harry Potter, but anybody can die. Ooh, you know? Anyway, she's going across the bridge. The guy behind her says, okay, you know what? I had this long, you know what? No, we're going to talk about this. I said it was bad. I'm going to defend my opinion. Because I hate it when people talk about, oh, this is bad, but then they don't tell you why. She's going across the bridge. This guy shows up, kills some other kids on the bridge behind her, tries to kill her. Then she threatens his balls with a knife. Two things. One, I hate this. I hate that threaten his balls is like the thing that authors love to do, to be like, wow, what a girl boss. She threatened to stab his balls. Like, oh, she threatened his balls. Wow, he's woo-wee, wow, balls. I'm sure I won't clip that out of context and make a YouTube short of it for haha funnies. It doesn't work for me. It just doesn't. Like, does Sarah Connor ever threaten Terminator's balls? No. Does Xenomorph get his balls threatened by Ripley? No. Does Xenomorph even have balls? I don't know. This doesn't feel badass. If you like that, cool. Good for you. Whatever. But to me, it doesn't feel badass. My main gripe, that was a small one, is that she is like, this girl, her name is Violet, the main character. She's got the classic, like, oh, I'm so weak, but I'm fast trope. And that's, I don't know, it's very frustrating. It's like, you're so sickly, how come you even can do this? I don't know. Anyway, no biggie. Eragon uses tropes as tools, so fine. I'll let this pass, even though it's kind of different. Because this isn't a narrative shortcut. This is telling me something that's incongruous with incongruous with what you've told me already. Although I guess the problem really isn't the trope then, it's the writing. Anyway. Tangent. This had me rolling my eyes, but, you know, whatever. Anyway, this dude that tries to kill her, right? She threatened his balls. That's his sole character trait. For the rest of the freaking book, he's angry that he couldn't kill her on the bridge, and he's, like, the biggest villain after this. Like, he's the only guy, like, he wants to kill her. That's it. Because of that. He hates her. Like, burning passion. Hates Violet. Hates him. For why? Because you couldn't kill him on the bridge. Like, he has no terrible motivation. Like, to murder somebody? That's a horrible motivation. So it's not like, oh man, I love to hate this villain. It's just like, every time it's like, oh boy, that guy's here. I'm like, oh, that guy. Like, it's stupid. Rambling. Okay. One more plot point makes this feel fanfic-ish. We'll skip down the line a little bit. Guess what? Not only does this girl who's silver hair, loves reading, and is physically weak, sickly all the time, doesn't get along with her mom, who sold her to One Direction, the War College. She bonds not only one, but 2 dragons. Whoa! And not only that, they're the biggest, meanest black dragon to ever exist, who wasn't going to bond anybody at all this year. And the other one is a gold dragon, which nobody's ever seen before. What? Crazy. Yeah. Okay. Now, again, frustrating. Whatever. Each dragon gives her a superpower. In this world, every writer, like, their bond gives the writer magic. And so, in this book, the way it works is since she bonded 2 dragons, she gets 2 superpowers. Or 2, like, magic powers. The first one is, of course, it's lightning, and they're like, wow, that's the most powerful skill ever. No one's had that in forever. You're so awesome because of that. And then the second one she gets, again, more spoilers here. Yes. Yeah. Time stop. She can stop time. That's the power she gets from the gold dragon, stopping time. Yeah, I should remind you at this point that, like, what we know about this girl is that she's, like, likes reading and makes horny comments about people. Yeah, anyway. Sorry, this is killing my energy. I gotta get through this. Back to the script. Okay, yeah. Now, on to real criticisms that are actually constructive. Not just like, oh, the fanfic angle. Because again, if you love fanfic tropes, this book's totally for you. Go for it. For me, it's just a lot of this stuff I don't really like because a lot of this stuff is like, it just happens out of nowhere and it doesn't feel earned. It doesn't feel cool. That's the bigger thing. It doesn't even have to feel cool or earned if it's cool, right? But if it's neither of those things, then it's like, well, rule of cool isn't even enough to save you. It's like, whatever. Constructive stuff, right? Okay. So problems with the lightning, or with the writing. Sorry, the books and the characters in the book, they all kind of talk the same way. Like if you took all of their lines out and separated them from, like, just like, oh, who said this line? I could not guess. Like all the characters have the same vocabularies, the same speech patterns. It's very frustrating. Excepting once in a while, Violet, who again, the main character, she'll make a horny comment, and for some reason people think this is witty. They'll go, oh wow, like there's at the very beginning of the book, she says something like, just make some horny comment. I don't even remember what it was, and her sister's like, wow, I forgot how witty you are. That's not being witty. That's just being horny. That's just being smart and being horny are the same thing. Anyway, that's not wit. That's just horny. That is it. Another thing, loads of characters call her smart. Her dragon calls her the smart. He's like the big one. He's like, you're the smartest person in your whole class. That's why I bonded you. She's not. Like, there's tons of stuff that happens that's like super obvious, and like you're reading them and you're like, why is this not occurring to you? Like, you're dumb. Why is this easy solution to this problem not occurring to you? And it's stupid because the book isn't told in third person. The book is first person present tense. So when something's happening, Violet's saying, I take the dagger in my hand and try and stab his balls. Like, everything we know is something that she knows. So it doesn't make sense that with the knowledge, if she's apparently this smart, she should be able to figure these things out with the knowledge that she has that is conveyed to us from her perspective. It's not like the author's giving us information that the character doesn't have. That's what I'm trying to get to here. There's a lot of repetition in the writing, phrases that are reused a lot, words that are just too close together. Like, as hell, she'll say, that made me mad as hell. And then, like, 3 lines later, another, as hell, as hell, as hell. Like, ugh! Too much. If you use it too much, it really kills the efficacy of the phrase. Sorry, I'm a little squirmy. I got a lot of energy tonight. Same thing with shot back. They say shot back way too many times. I said this, so-and-so shot back. Ugh. I guess it does make it feel realistic, like it is actually written by an 18 or a 20-year-old girl who doesn't actually have, like, a literary sense, but it makes the reading experience uncomfortable, so even if it's realistic, I think that, I don't think that's a positive. Yeah. But again, I don't know, I'm very much not the target audience for this book, so. Anyway, side characters aren't fleshed out at all. Oh, this really pissed me off. Side characters aren't fleshed out at all. Violet's best friend, we barely know anything about, to this, but like, nothing. To the point where I'm at, where both read 2 books. Nothing. Know nothing about them. Actually, I didn't read them. I listened to the audiobooks, which I will say, props to the lady reading the audiobook. Those are very, like, the acting was actually pretty good in them. I very much like the lady who read them. The side characters aren't fleshed out. Yep. Violet's best friend. We know barely anything about her. As a result, she doesn't feel important. We don't care. As the readers, like, I don't care about her. This is a problem because, like, later down the line, there's a character that dies right in front of Violet. And Violet's, like, super torn up about it, but, like, she appeared, like, 3 chapters ago. Like, you just started talking about her. And, like, other than that, she was just, like, a name here and there. We don't know anything about her character, her personality. So we don't care about it. Like, she was barely in this. Why should we care now that she died? And so it makes it frustrating. Like, you didn't know. Like, I get somebody died in front of you, so that's a bummer. But that happens all the time at this school. So it's like, why? I don't even remember this girl who's died. I don't even remember her name. Most of the other characters, I remember their names. Not best friend, it's Rhiannon. So there's that, right? Violet, whatever. Crush, Xaden. Other crush, Dane. Right, there's a love triangle. I hate Dane, too. He doesn't grow as a character. Like, 5 times he gets slapped in the face with the same problem. Refuses to learn at all. Oh, he's just a man. No. It's, he's just, like, he has no character growth whatsoever in the whole first book. And maybe, like, he gets a tiny bit in the second book, but not very much. Yeah. This thing carries on into the romance, though. Like I said, Violet's crushing on Dane and on Xaden, but then later she doesn't like Dane. And, like, from the get-go, I'm like, oh, yeah, she's gonna pick Xaden. Like, Dane is a setup to kind of suck, and he keeps sucking throughout the book. Xaden, however, also sucks. We don't know really hardly anything about him. I get, like, oh, he's hot because he's mysterious. And don't get me wrong, like, there's nothing wrong with having a character who's hot. But the problem is that, your character's going to be, like, physically attracted to each other. That's great. They want to bone. Cool. It doesn't make sense that she's falling in love with this guy because they have no character moments together. Like, there's no get to know you anything. Very, like, just nothing. Except tiny things here and there. And it's like, this interaction could have been, like, with a teacher instead of this guy. Like, it's a bit, Anyway, there's one character I kind of like. Right, I really like this dude. His name's Liam. After Violet bonds her dragons, she finds out her black dragon is mated to Xaden's dragon. And if a dragon's mate dies, he dies. And because if a dragon dies, then it's bonded rider dies. So basically, if one of them dies, they all die. Right, all 4 of them. That's the whole thing. So Xaden's like, ooh, I hate you because I'm supposed to or something, but I'm going to send you a bodyguard because I can't have you dying now. And so he assigns her Liam. Liam is her bodyguard. She's like, I don't want to have a bodyguard around. This guy's dumb. But she, like, talks to him over time. They get to know each other. They become friends. The chemistry with Liam is there. Liam is a good character. Liam is fleshed out. We know things about Liam. We like Liam. He's funny. We care about Liam. Liam has character traits. and then they kill him off. He would have been a much better love interest. He was the only interesting friend character, and they kill him off. Gone. In front of her. Fridged. He gets fridged. So, you know, I mean, it's nice that, like, it's finally not a woman getting fridged in the media, or, you know, in the fiction, but, like, why? Rebecca. Oh, author Rebecca Yarros. I'm on a first-name basis with Chris, so we're on a first-name basis, too. In fact, I'm going to call you Becca. Becca, what are you doing? Is this your first book you ever wrote? Is that what this is? Are you inexperienced? I genuinely think that's what it is, because a lot of it, it's like a lot of these little problems, but they're everywhere. Anyway, he's got a little sister, Liam, right? So you're like, oh, she's going to come up. She's going to be relevant. There's going to be a bit of a, like, Violet's going to have a thing. Nope, she's barely in the book. She's barely in there after Liam dies. Okay. Finally, we're going to touch on, I think, the thing that people really like about these books the most. The spicy scenes, okay? That's what all the rage is in the book talk community, from what I understand. So that's what draws a lot of people to these books. They are, in my opinion, not very good. Rewind. This book has an attitude about sex that I really appreciate. They're straight up sex scenes, okay? Like, they're not afraid to just be like, boom, they fucking, okay? I like that. I like that they're not, like, beating around the bush. I'm a straight up guy. I just, like, I don't know, don't dance around it. That said, I don't like how they're executed. Mostly because the descriptions are fine, the actions are cool. There could be a little bit more, specific, because there were times where I just got lost a little bit, like, a little bit confused about, like, oh, wait, they're on this piece of furniture, not that one. Oh, this thing broke. But it's like, there's some dialogue in there that doesn't feel very good. Like, it doesn't, like, feel hot or, like, build the situation. It's like, it just is awkward. Like, I wouldn't say perhaps in bed, you know? Like, if I'm, you know, oh, are you gonna plow me like a field? Perhaps. Like, no, it's just, it feels awkward. Like, right? Like, there's just a lot of, like, sentences and words that just, they feel like that's not how people speak intimately. It's very awkward. She's a little bit shy about using some words, which I dislike. Again, like, I don't want to, like, get into them too much, but there's some words that describe certain parts of our bodies that she just, like, refuses to say, which is a little frustrating, but that's fine. Other than that, it's pretty openly described. If you only are reading this for the H scenes, the spicy scenes, would not recommend, because they don't take up a ton of the book. Anyway, yeah, long story short, I didn't like this book. I thought it was pretty bad. Same thing with the sequel. The sequel, I will say, okay, the sequel's better. Still not very good. Long story short, I didn't like this book. Thought it was pretty bad. I could spend a lot of time discussing it, and you know, I'd be happy to talk about it more and, like, break down everything more. But we're here to talk about Dragons and Riders, so let's get into the subgenre tropes, subgenre specifics. Yay! I'll put a little sound effect here. Subgenre specifics. First, I'm getting my mouth dry because I've been a good boy and been recording for 33 minutes and 40 seconds now. We're gonna have a Mountain Dew Baja Blast. So the big stuff first. I'm gonna pause and take a drink. Okay. So the big stuff. We're still talking about Fourth Wing. Right. Fourth Wing. Big stuff in Fourth Wing. Dragon bonding. So, at first I was critical of this, and actually in my script I was critical of this, but as I was thinking about it, sorry, I'm looking for a napkin right now. I don't see any. I spilled a little on my fingers. It's fine, it's just whiskey. I was a little critical on it in the script, but I think actually I'm going to pull it back a little bit. So, Dragon bonds. The bonds in this series are the closest to how they're done in Eragon yet. Like, as opposed to anything else I've read so far. But they're also a little bit different. So, dragons are hatched, raised by other dragons in seclusion from humans, right? Totally. Except for very, very rare cases, I would have to assume. Actually, there's gonna be a few more spoilers here, so get, heads up. Why the screwdriver? It was on my desk. I like to have stuff to play with. Right, they're raised secluded from humans in this veil. It's called I forget what it's called. Whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So Violet's second dragon, is little gold one. Turns out that's a juvenile. They're only gold in their youth. And when they grow up they become a certain color. It's usually like black, brown, green, red, blue, orange. So far, no other metallics have been mentioned. Yeah. So the dragons and the humans have an agreement to fight the war together, which is why there's bonding exists at all. They fight Griffin Riders. The Dragon Riders fight Griffin Riders. Yeah, it's yeah. Every year, the college has a new crop of students. They get to a certain point in the year. They call it threshing. They send them out into this valley, and then a dragon picks them to bond with. It's like not a big deal though. It's just like when they bond you, it's like, oh, I can hear your voice in my head now. Like that's it. There's not like a whoa moment. It's just like, hello, I'm the dragon. Oh, hi, dragon. Yeah, like whatever. Okay. That's really it. That's also how the dragons talk to each other, right? So, dragon rearing, we touched on. Dragons talk to each other telepathically. Again, Eragon, dragons communicate with everything telepathically, right? They touch your mind, that's how they speak to you. Now, at first, okay, the bond is, let's come back a little bit. The bond is, in these books, a lot quieter than it is in Eragon. It's like, you will forget it's even a thing that the dragon can hear everything she's hearing, until her dragon, Pern, says something in her head. Like, it also feels very one way. He experiences everything she does and says, and comments on it all the time, seems to hear her thoughts all the time, and she struggles to even understand his emotions a lot of the time. Maybe she's just autistic. I don't know. I doubt it. She's not really, doesn't have those vibes, She just like, yeah, it's not like she struggles to understand feelings. It's like, he just doesn't share them. I don't know. Typical man, am I right? Anyway, I think Becca might be a little inexperienced writing. Oh, I already said this. I said this earlier when I went off script. Yeah, Psychic Bond, in my opinion, not super well done because they don't feel very joint. They don't feel like partners in a lifetime bond. It feels like Mystery Science Theater, but it's a grumpy old dragon. And sometimes she even forgets to write that. Like, oh man, I sure wonder what the dragon would think of this scenario if only he was listening in. Oh, well, he is, but the writer forgot to put it in the book. So, now, I will say, this isn't actually all that bad. I wish it was reflected better. However, I think that this is the same kind of idea as I've referred to Chris doing with Eragon, where I've read Eragon. I know how the Dragon Rider bond in Eragon works. So, I don't need a lot of explanation to know how it works in this book. I think that's, if that's the angle she was going for, the trope is a tool, we're just doing it like that because that's how the readers expect it, great. I still wish the dragons were a bigger character. I still wish anybody except Violet was a bigger character. That's a problem with the writing, not with how this trope is executed. Yeah, so that's how that's done. Psychic Dragon Bond, you see it. Oh, if your dragon dies, you die. Doesn't go the other way for some reason. Yeah. Connected, worth noting, if your dragon's fucking, makes you rabidly horny. We'll see this again later. I don't have a problem with this. It makes sense. It's just weird that that's like the one emotion that's shared strongly. Like if Pern goes into a rage, Violet should also go into a rage. But a lot of other stuff isn't as connected. But again, I don't know. It's a book talk book, so maybe it just has to have like a certain amount of spice teasing. The next element I want to talk about is writing. Writing, I think it's strange, but I mean, it's fine. It's not a problem. I just, personally, it's not how I write it because it doesn't make sense in my brain. Everyone writes bareback on their dragon. So you just, like, there's a test, like, right after you get your dragon that, like, flies around, and you have to stay on its back. You have to keep your seat, they call it. And if you fall off, you weren't eligible. You were too weak anyway. You should have died to keep the rest of the wings safe, so you're not a liability. Violet is too small to be on Terran to Big Ass. He's the biggest dragon out there, and she's the smallest little girly, just a tiny little girly pop, and she's small, so she can't stay on. So she has to have a saddle made, which again I feel like that makes the most sense. Like everybody should have a saddle. I don't know, like it's better for transporting stuff. Again, not a criticism. I just like it better. Yeah. So there's a lot of like death in that regard too, right? A lot of people just fall off their dragons and die. Air-to-air combat isn't super cool in these books. At least not in the first book. There's actually some really cool, clever stuff that happens in the second book. Again, I don't want to get into like too much spoiler territory. Not that I haven't already talked about a lot, but although it's not super great in Eragon either. So again, this isn't necessarily a detractor specifically for this book. Although in Eragon, I guess like there's like one dragon in the world for like a long time, right? He's like the last dragon rider. That's fine. But it is a bummer that it's like, oh man, a dragon and a rider, but you don't get to see them do like cool stuff together. Actually, that's probably my biggest gripe with this book is it's like they don't do anything cool together in Fourth Wing. It's not until Iron Flame, the second book, that they start doing really like actually being a team, and even then, they still feel very separate. I don't feel like they are bonded for life and they think about everything together. Whatever. A bit of a bummer. Yeah, the next thing, magic. I guess I'll cover that in this section, which means I didn't talk about it in the Eragon section, so I should. Okay, in Eragon, basically you just have to be like, a lot of people can do it, not everyone can. Not most people. Stop. A lot of people can. They just like instinctively feel like the magic in the world a little bit, and then they can channel it through the use of the ancient language, which is basically like name magic, right? If you know something's true name, you can control it. That kind of idea. They use that arcane language to control the magic in the world, to force it to do things that they like, and it pulls energy from themselves. Unless they have other stores of energy, like magic crystals or a dragon or whatever. Life energy. That's what powers magic. In this book, there are some interesting elements here too. So first of all, when you bond a dragon, it gives you magic, right? You get a sigil, I think they call it. Signet. You get a signet. It's like a magic dragon tattoo that gives you magic powers. Violet gets 2 of them, and time stop lightning. There is a third way, and that's bonding a griffin. A second way that's bonding a griffin, and a third way that's a spoiler not relevant to this video. So that's how it works. Signet is very specialized magic. So in Eragon, he can do just about anything he can conjure up a spell for, right? He can say, okay, I want to heat up this water and toss it through the air. And as long as he can structure that in the ancient language and then build out his sentence and then form his will correctly, like have an image of it in his head, he can do that. In this book, Violet has lightning, which means she can use lightning. How specifically she can use is unclear, because after she gets it, she doesn't train it for like ever, and then when she does start training it, she doesn't get any better at it. It's really annoying. Anyway, so basically she gets like 1 power, right? She can't just do anything. Now, the magic expends energy differently. Like it makes her tired, but it also like it's power from the dragon, so it physically goes through you and it heats you up. So if you overuse your magic, you burn out and you die. Like your body overheats and you just fucking die. I kind of actually like that, the idea that like you're just a conduit for like a greater power, and you're just focusing it. That's pretty interesting, actually. That said, like I said, Violet sucks at it. Doesn't like you would think that in a world so fatal, she would spend a lot more time trying to figure out how to use this power, but she sure doesn't. Until somebody forces her, and then even then she doesn't get very good at it. It's very upsetting. Anyway, yeah. Bit of an addendum, actually. Earlier tonight. Okay, sorry. That's all I've got for this subgenre tropes section. Earlier tonight, I saw they're making Amazon has been greenlit to make a show, like to do a show based on these books. That's frustrating because these books, like, it's a lot of romantasy, like bad romantasy, and not a lot of dragons. So that's kind of a bummer. It's just like, man, I can't believe that. Ugh. Anyway. Thanks for sticking along through that part. Yeah, thanks for sticking along with that part. Sorry, I just like zoned out there. What the hell? Next up, the Pern segment. Okay, Dragonriders of Pern. You might have heard of them. It's a pretty big deal. So, Pern has been around since Anne McCaffrey, author, wrote the first book in 1968. 1968 is when the first Pern story was published in a sci-fi magazine. So, disclaimer, I have not read every Pern book. I have read, if you've read the Pern books, I've read Dragonquest, nope, Dragonflight, Dragonquest, The White Dragon, and Dragondawn. Okay, so these three are a sequential story, one after another. Dragondawn, I'll touch on a little bit more later, if you don't know any of this stuff. Now, there are so many Pern books, I'm going to put some in every video that I do, because there's a lot to get through, and I didn't want to like read the whole series just to talk about it in one video in a really compressed section. I feel like that wouldn't do it justice. Yes. Now, so, big asterisk here so far. My opinions might change down the line as I read more Pern books. But yeah, my raw, straight up opinion of Pern. Pern kicks ass, dude. These books are cool. These books are freaking cool. So for weird reasons though, like story wise and trope wise. So I feel like I don't like this light. Hold on. Is this better? Oh yeah, the spooky lighting. Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's kind of weird, but no. Okay, hold on. Pause again. Okay, I try to get the light just out of frame so it's not like, dang it, ruining the focus. Stay right there. There we go. I want the light on my face. I don't want YouTube to get like all that grainy stuff because it's dark, like YouTube likes to do. Okay, Pern. Why is it awesome? Let me just tell you. The first book starts with this like blurb. I'm just gonna read it to you. It's not a spoiler. This is literally like one of the first things you read in the first book. When is a legend legend? When is a myth myth? How old and discussed must a fact be for it to be relegated to the category of fairy tale? And when do certain facts remain incontrovertible while others lose their validity to assume a shabby, unstable character? Ruckbat in the Sagittarian sector was a golden G-type star. It had 5 planets and 1 stray it had attached and held in recent millennia. Its 3rd planet was enveloped by an air man could breathe, boasted water he could drink, and possessed a gravity that permitted man to walk confidently erect. Men discovered it and promptly colonized it. They did this to every habitable planet, and then, whether callously or through collapse of empire, the colonists never discovered, and eventually forgot to ask, left the colonies to fend for themselves. When men first settled on Ruckbat's 3rd world and named it Pern, they had taken little notice of the stranger planet, swinging around its adopted primary in a wildly elliptical orbit. Within a few generations, they had forgotten its existence. The desperate path the wanderer pursued brought it close to its stepsister every 200 Terran years at perihelion, when the aspects were harmonious and the conjunction with its sister planet was close enough, as it often was. The indigenous life of the wanderer sought to bridge the space gap to the more temperate and hospitable planet. It was during the frantic struggle to combat this menace, dropping through Pern's sides like silver threads, that Pern's tenuous contact with the mother planet was broken. Recollections of Earth receded further from Perni's history with each successive generation, until memory of their origins degenerated past legend or myth into oblivion. To forestall the incursions of dreadful threads, the Pernese, with the ingenuity of their forgotten Terran forebears, developed a highly specialized variety of a life form, indigenous to their adopted planet. Such humans had a high empathy rating and some innate telepathic ability, were trained to use and preserve this unusual animal whose ability to teleport was of great value in the fierce struggles to keep Pern bare of threads. The winged, tailed and fiery-breathed dragons named for the earth legend they resembled. Their dragon men, a breed apart, and the menace they battled, created a whole new group of legends and myths. Once relieved of imminent danger, Pern settled into a more comfortable way of life. The descendants of heroes fell into disfavor, as legends fell into disrepute. What? That is awesome, dude! It's a bit wordy, I know, that one's kind of a mouthful. And following books have a similar, like, intro prologue that's a lot tighter. But this is dope, dude! You're like, okay, just, like, going into the intro, like, raw dogging it. You hear it, and you're just like, okay. In a vacuum, knowing nothing else, I'm like, is this dropping on me? A new world, like, for our story to happen in a new solar system, even. Dragons are created, maybe even, like, specifically bred by humans. That's cool. We might see an abandoned spaceship. There are, like, super empaths with, like, brain powers, maybe. Dragons can teleport. Dude, that's awesome. That is so cool. It's just, like, cool at the outset. Anne McCaffrey got it locked in with, like, just, like, a sick premise, okay? Okay. Enough gushing. So, I read, the 4 books I read are all pretty short. Dragonflight, Quest, White Dragon, they're all pretty short, as was Dragondawn. I'm not gonna tell you the whole plots or anything. I definitely recommend reading them because they're so short. The audiobooks are like 2.5 hours. I could definitely read them faster, just like, you know, you probably could too. Because you don't have to, like, stop and take a breath, so on. Now, to summarize the huge mouthful I just gave you, the conceit of Pern is this. We came to Pern. We lost contact with the rest of humanity, made dragons, regressed as a society because of the thread, which falls from this sister planet that's sort of bouncing around the Ruckbat system in this weird elliptical ovaloid orbit. Yeah, they get into it in the books more, but Thread is like this long alien murder spaghetti. It eats trees, crops, and even soil to a limited extent. First book's about this girl Lessa, this dude Flar, and they need to find a way to restore the wares, which are like Dragon Man bases, because the Thread's gonna come back. There's passes, they call them, which are 50-year intervals. So for 50 years, a pass, they call it, Thread's falling from the sky at various times. Like, it comes like during storms, or like, it's not a storm, but it's like, it comes like a storm. So like, oh, it's here, and then it's gone, and it's here, and then it's gone. It's not constant. And then there are 200-ish years segments where Thread doesn't fall. They call this an interval. So there's intervals and passes. I mentioned this because I think it's gonna be relevant later. It'll be like, oh, the 4th pass, the 5th pass, whatever. The story takes place in this pass of Pern. Anyway, they track the orbit of this red star so they know when the thread's gonna fall. Book 1 and 2, right? They're about Lessa. Book 2 is about some other characters we met in book 1. They're fighting a thread here and there, trying to find a way to stop it forever. Book 3 is about this kid, and it's kind of like a growing up story, coming of age story. Him and his dragon. Dragondawn is kind of cool because it's a story about how mankind landed on, settled Pern. It tells you a story about the first dragons. Definitely read at least Dragonflight, Dragonquest, and the White Dragon before you read Dragondawn. Or, you know, okay, probably in bare necessities, you probably should only need to read Flight and Quest before Dawn. It's probably better to read more, though. I don't know. I will say, I felt better. Like, definitely don't read Dragondawn as your first Pern book. I'll say that. Because it's cool to, like, oh, this thing, and, like, the way things tie together, it just makes sense to read it as a prequel, not as a first book. So, that's enough opinions, raw opinions on there. Pern is really cool. There's a lot of really cool stuff in it. Sorry, I didn't go like crazy long opinion dump like in 4th Wing, but I feel like 4th Wing has this hype, this crazy hype that it just doesn't deserve. Again, I'm totally willing to discuss this. Get in the comments, talk to me about it. Make some. Don't just rage comment. All right, tell me what's good about this book. We'll talk about it. All right, we'll have a discussion. I want to change my mind. Tell me, convince me it's good. Okay, genre stuff. So we've established Pern, dope. Love it. Definitely read it. A classic. It's so old. It is definitely a genre classic. So I would say That alone makes it worth checking out. Okay, so once again, we're gonna touch on the bond, the dragon-human bond. It is psychic in a way, sort of. It's kind of different on Pern. So the way it works on Pern is when the eggs are getting ready to hatch, they track down a bunch of boys. Just stay with me here. They track down a bunch of boys who have potential, bring them back to the nest. They being the people of the Were, which again, the Were is like Dragon Hideout, Dragon Man base. They bring you back to the Were. The dragons hatch, they run around, they pick their favorite boy. They form a bond and they communicate psychically. The dragons can speak words into your mind and vice versa. Their psychic bond isn't quite as deep as it is in Eragon. Like in Eragon, they're like I said, they're like two halves of the same whole. They're an entity that is incomplete without the other. In this case, it's like they're just like best friends, like tight. You're tight with your dragon still, right? You're still. It's a bond, and they share like a lot of big emotions, not necessarily the small ones as much. And they do chat. They talk like a lot. The dragons are not quite at like human intelligence levels. Like they say, like they're capable of reason, but not as much as people. They don't remember things as well, but they can like form coherent sentences. They're probably smarter than the dumbest humans. I don't know. Yeah, they mentally communicate with humans again, with language. They're self-strong, animal instincts. Now, I only mentioned boys. We're just bear with me. Like I said, we're gonna get through this whole thing. It's all gonna build a picture. It's gonna make sense. Why I talked about all this. So the way dragons reproduce is as follows. See, that's where it's coming together. The queen of the dragons in the Were goes into heat, right? And all the eligible male dragons that would have hatched, grown up, all the old enough, strong enough ones attempt to fly her. They call it like, they're gonna fly the queen. There's dragon Nemeth. They're gonna fly Nemeth. So the best one gets to mate. She lays a clutch. Okay. This is where I mentioned sort of like sharing, emotions, and again, the sharing the horny that happens over the bond. When the dragons are boning, it makes the people who are bonded to them want to bone each other as well. That's like, again, it's not a problem that Fourth Wing did it. It makes sense. You know what? Dragon horny makes people horny. That's it. We're gonna call it. That's one of our subgenre tropes. We're gonna write that one down, guys. Yeah. Where was I? Oh, right. So usually the bonded pair, they get real hormonal. Their dragons are going at it. The males, yeah. So they do that. As the males fly, after the male who successfully flies the queen, usually his master's right, the one that gets all. Anyway, they mate. The males come in all kinds of different colors, but the females seem to always be golden, as far as I've read so far. Yeah. If there's a golden egg, that's going to be a queen egg. All the other eggs are usually brown or copper, whatever. Usually, I think the same color as the father. I might be wrong. When there's a golden egg, what they do is they bring a bunch of girls to the Were when that's going to hatch, and that dragon picks a female, a woman. Usually like a young woman. Maybe they do pick old ladies. I don't know. I don't know if age is a thing in Pern. I mean, like relative to dragon bonding. Usually they pick like young people though because they want to have them for a long time. As far as the more like with like dragon men, you want boys who can be soldiers. So they pick younger. Here nor there. They bring so gold egg's gonna hatch. They bring a bunch of girls to the Were. That baby gold female dragon bonds a girl, and then they raise it, and then it probably gets sent off to another Were wherever it's needed, right? Because they're much rarer. It's like being in the military, right? You get shipped off to a different base. This is what happens to Lessa, who's the main character of the first book, right? She bonds a gold dragon. It's not a spoiler. You knew this was going to happen, guys. Yep. Yeah, so that was, like I said, that was like three things kind of rolled into one. The bond, the communication, and how dragons do, like how they make more, and how they exist in nature, which is there's no wild dragons in this book. There are, I guess I should have mentioned a fourth wing. There are wild dragons, or not wild, but like dragons that just choose not to bond. And in Eragon, there are wild dragons who. So in Eragon, like a bajillion years ago, the elves and the dragons made like a pact, and a certain amount of eggs are given to the elves every so often to make riders, to hatch as riders. Wild dragons are fundamentally different from bonded dragons in Eragon because they think differently, because they're born and raised wild. There's no wild dragons in Pern though, because humans made them. Which I won't get into the details of, but Dragondawn is really awesome, an awesome read. Definitely pick it up. That's one of the draws on a Sea of Pern is like world building and watching the world grow and expand from the characters' perspectives. The author, Anne, we'll call her Annie, so I'm on because I'm calling Becca, and Chris. Annie is really good at constructing the world in a way that is interesting and revealing things in an interesting manner, I'll say. It's not even quite the right way to put it, but yes, she's very good. So, read that. Definitely read Dragondawn. Again, read some of the other stuff first. Right, where is it going with this? Huge Joust world building. There's not a load of action. There's not a ton of action in the Pern books. However, they are still a very interesting read because of a lot of things I just mentioned. I want to talk about the teleporting a little bit. Like, dragons can teleport. Basically, they go to an in-between dimension, and then from there go to a real dimension, like back to the physical space. I don't know. Like, it's hard to touch on this one because this isn't really a trope in the subgenre like a lot of the other stuff is. Anyway, that is that. Woo! I lost my train of thought. Okay. Right, so yeah. I suspect because Pern is so old, we're going to see a lot of Pern tropes coming back in other Dragonrider media as we go on. Because it's cool. Like, I think this is probably very formative for a lot of these books. Yep. Yeah, so that's the Pern episode. Well, again, I'm going to touch on Pern more in every one of these videos because there's so many books, so I'll have to just read more for the next one and so on. I'll put a couple more. And finally, the last series I want to talk about in this video is Joust. Yeah, Joust is... I should look up the year. Man, I didn't look up the author. Oh, I know it too. Oh... okay. Joust by Mercedes Lackey. What happened to my lighting? It's because my screen's not white anymore. Joust by Mercedes Lackey. So there's 4 books. You got Joust, you got Alta, Joust, Alta, Sanctuary, Aerie. These are... First of all, I really like these. They're good. They are suitable for younger readers, unlike I would say, like, put your teenager onto Pern. Elementary schooler is fine. That guy can read Eragon. You know, fourth wing, obviously adult only content. Joust, you can put your like preteen onto that, and be fine. So Joust by Mercedes Lackey, really interesting. Good books, first of all. Good, like they're kind of like a coming of age trilogy, not trilogy, quadrology. It's like a coming of age series, and they tell their story very well, in my opinion. So the premise is basically there's these 2 countries that are at war. Alta and Tia are at war. This kid, his name is Vetch, is caught in the middle of it. His family lands get yoinked away, and then he becomes a slave for, essentially a slave, technically worse than a slave, for Tia. He's Altan. Becomes a slave for Tia. But while he's there, he learns how to hatch and raise his own dragon. He does that, and he escapes. Ensuing story that follows is very epic. So, things to note about Joust. Magic exists, but not for Vetch, who changes his name to Karan later. Or that's his original name. It's a whole thing. Magic exists, but he doesn't really do a whole lot of it. Oh, Pern. By the way, there's no magic in Pern. Magic sci-fi. I shouldn't have to mention that, I feel like. He doesn't do a whole lot of it. Dragons are fundamentally, we'll come back to this in the subgenre trope section. I like these books. They're good. They take place in like this sort of desert, Egyptian flavored, Indus River Valley maybe flavored setting. Everyone wears like a sort of white cloth kilts and tunics, instead of it's not standard European fantasy. It's very interesting. It's very like kind of based on the Nile. They call it the Great Mother River, and there's a lot of like desert stuff, and dragons are desert creatures, and very, very interesting setting, very different, and I really appreciate that for just not conforming to it's European fantasy again. Like that's it's been done, and it's just cool to see something fresh. All of these books were written in like the 90s, I think. There's a little bit of camp, I guess. So my problems I have with these books, they are a bit, there's some stuff that's like a little bit tropey, but again, I mean, that's fine. I don't have any big problems with these books. Maybe there's something, okay, actually, yes, I have two big problems. One small problem, one big problem. Some of the characters could be fleshed out a little deeper. A lot of the time, they just, like, do stuff, and then it doesn't, like, it's not super, it's whatever, it's no biggie. The big problem I have is sometimes Mercedes Lackey, I'm just gonna call you Mercedes, will just, like, in the middle of a sentence, like a conversation with somebody, like, between two characters, in the middle of one thought, she's just like me for real. In the middle of one thought, she'll start another thought and go on for way too long about that thought. So it'll be like two characters will be having a conversation, and then she realizes that she needs to explain this piece of background world information. And so she'll just, like, write a paragraph about that and then go back to the conversation. It's kind of like, it's like a slap to the face and, like, another one when you go back to the conversation. It's a lot. But besides that, it's pretty cool. Yeah. Besides that, the books are very good. Would recommend reading. They have a really interesting flavor that's pretty unique. And, yeah. Okay. Subgenre tropes after a sip of Baja Blast. And a sip of whiskey, why not? These two things don't go together, by the way. Actually, though, they might. If I mix these, that might be good. But I'm not going to. That's not what this video is about. So, the dragon bond. First of all, dragons don't really bond in this series the same way. They do, but they don't. So, they don't. But they do, but they don't. My screen turned off. Dragons are more, they're much more animals in this world. They are creatures. They're not like mystical, magical, man-made, anything like that. They are animals. So, just like any other animal, raised from birth, they can be pretty tame. And that's how they do it, right? They're kind of like, their intelligence level is, I want to say, somewhere between like a very smart dog and a bird. They can interpret and understand commands reasonably well. But there's some things they just can't do. They're just not, like, whatever. Smart bird, by the way. When I say between a bird, I don't mean like one of those little French fry birds. They're directly compared to falcons in the books. Train of thought. So I don't have any script written about Joust. I literally finished the 4th book today. So I'm just, like, going off about him. Right, so, yeah, there's no real, they're not technically bonded, they're tame animals, more than, like, bonded creatures. That said, the book does use the term bonded, and they do have very much, like, favorite people. Like, if you're there, so I guess now I should get into dragon reproduction. Dragons in the wild, they're like animals. They hatch, they raise their babies, like, kind of like birds, a little bit differently. There's some world-building details in there. Not important. The tame dragons are, in the world, Vetch hatches his dragon, and it bonds him right away, like it imprints on him. He has to, like, help it hatch with a hammer and everything, because the shell's super thick. And then he raises it takes care of it, and they have like they're bonded like that. So it's very much like a boy and a dog, a boy and his dog style of storytelling, like the trope of boy and his dog. If you're not familiar, there's been like Shiloh is the most famous example. There's a ton of books like that out there. Probably, I haven't read any horse girl books, but it's probably a similar situation as that, I would have to imagine. Where it's like, you know, the girl has an unshakable bond with the horse because she took care of it when it was sick or something. Yeah. So it's probably that. How much to get into without spoiling anything? So, okay, in the first book, Dragonriders, there's one tame dragon in the world, and all of the other ones are caught as young dragons. They finish raising them in captivity, and they have to keep them drugged all the time to keep them obedient. The tame dragons are an exception to this because they were born, raised, imprinted on a human. Now, okay, yeah. So that's that. That's kind of how the dragons reproduce, how dragons riders work. They call them jousters, which I think is kick-ass because a lance is the weapon that makes the most sense for a mounted flying unit. Like, well, outside of ranged stuff, obviously. But if you're on a dragon, right? You're sitting on a dragon. Godzilla's back. He's our dragon, okay? You're sitting on his back, okay? So this is your POV. You're looking down. Your enemies are over here. This is the ground, okay? You can't really shoot, like, you have a big blind spot where its head is, and behind you, and dragons have wings, right? So there's big old wings out here. So really, you have, like, this quadrant, this quadrant, this quadrant, and this quadrant to shoot from. And to shoot from. So you can't do a ton there. You can do a little. Or you can use a lance to de-dragon, or to de-horse, de-dragon other riders. It's just cool. It's just like dragon riders should use lances. I have had this thought since the first time I picked up a Dragon Rider book. It's very cool to see it reflected in a book. Call them jousters. People who ride dragons are jousters. So the jousters ride these tame, or these drugged up dragons around. They go to war or whatever. But then they start, you know, there's a couple tame dragons who are raised from birth. It's a whole thing. Read the book to find out more. Yeah. So the jousters fly in the dragons. They're all saddled up. They sometimes transport things. They run messages once in a while. They're very much I don't want to say realistic. I hate using the term realism when I'm talking about fantasy. But they're a very plausible element of this fantastic world. This fantasy world. This fantasy war. Yeah, that's where I want to go with that. So, okay, we talked about the bond. We talked about dragon rearing. Again, that's done in the wild, and it's done by hand. There's no mystical bond. Dragons communicate like any other animal with each other and with people. Unless you are a specific kind of person who has the gift to speak to animals with magic. What else we talk about? That's really all of the big subgenre tropes this one hits. I gotta say, I really like that. I love that Dragon Riders are jousters. Like, that just is cool. That is freaking cool. It makes sense and it's awesome. Yeah, I guess I don't have a ton to say about Joust. That's a bit of a bummer, because they're very good, but, like, they're, okay. Check out Joust by Mercedes Lackey. They're really good. They have almost no fandom online. Like, I've seen people talk about them and be like, oh, these are pretty good. I looked, I couldn't find any fan art. Granted, it was a very short look. There's not a ton of fan art out there. There is very little discussion about them. And I think that's a crime, because like I said, I think they're absolutely worth a read. They're a good, sort of easygoing, simple series of books. They're nothing crazy. They're worth a read. Beyond that, they feel pretty good. They definitely get epic, and yeah. Okay. Yep. Okay. That's all I have to say about Joust, apparently. And that actually brings us to the end of the video. Thank you for watching. I will be talking about more Dragon Rider books in the future. As I read more, I'm going to read probably another 3 books plus some Pern books, or 3 series plus some Pern stuff for the next one. And then I'll make my video about it. And again, I'm gonna read every single one I possibly can. Yeah, this video has been long enough. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next one.